18 days, 24 states, way too many Uncrustable sandwiches, and that was our main snack, potato chips. Did we sleep enough? Probably not. Was it worth missing out on every minute of sleep? Absolutely. So here's how we survived crossing America. We kicked off our trip on July 2nd, about 10:30, 11 a.m., and our first stop was to St. Mary's, Pennsylvania, which is where Lila is from, and we were there for a 4th of July party. We started to get the house ready for a party, and July 4th, had the family over and had a great time celebrating the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Go USA. After that, it was time to clean up after the party. And the next day, we spent some time on indoor chores and things, cleaning up after the party. And Lila had some stuff to do. I was primarily on childcare duty, which I love to do. And it was on Monday, July 6th, when we got started, ready to start the next leg of our trip. So from St. Mary's, Pennsylvania, we drove to Upper Sandusky, Ohio, which is my hometown, where I spent my adolescence. And I had not been back to Upper Sandusky since 2017 for my 25th year high school reunion. So it's been quite a while since I've been back to Upper. Hadn't changed much. We stopped and went to Stepping Stones Park and took a little walk. And from there, we went to where my childhood home is, Goshen, Indiana, and stayed in Goshen that night and woke up the next morning to go to one of my family's most favorite places, favorite restaurants in the country is called the Olympia Candy Kitchen in Goshen, and had some breakfast. And from there, we were ready to start like the next big leg of the trip. The next big leg took us to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Along the way, we did have some stops in South Dakota that were pretty fun. So Wall Drug, which they begin telling you is coming about 350 miles before you even get there, which was a touristy, fun little place that I don't ever need to go back to. And we also stopped at the Corn Palace, which was very cool. Just murals made of thousands of ears of corn. I do recommend that one. Waldrug, maybe not so much if you don't like crowds, but we did eat there. It was pricey. However, they have 5-cent coffee, which they begin advertising to you for miles and miles and miles. South Dakota was a lot of fun. The next day after we stayed in Sioux Falls, we investigated the Sioux Falls Park, the falls themselves, and the stories that are associated with the creation of these falls is really cool. When you walk through the park, there's signs and things that you can check out that explain to you the origins of making it a park, and it was really nice. Now, we had to cross South Dakota to get to our next destination, which was Yellowstone National Park. And so along the way, the primary place that I wanted to go was the Crazy Horse Memorial and Mount Rushmore. But before we got there, we had to pass through Badlands National Park, which was as bad as it sounds. It was great. Really pretty. And driving through Iowa, first off, cornfields and windmills, thousands of windmills. And then throughout South Dakota, it's much of the same as just flatlands. And then all of a sudden you come across the Badlands and it's just this myriad colors and shapes and just awesome views. We took the Jeep top off to drive through the park. It was a little bit cooler and breezy, just a beautiful day, sunny and warm, but a bit breezy. And from the Badlands National Park, then we made it to the Crazy Horse Memorial in the afternoon, which it had begun raining. And so the bus tours were shut down. But right when we got there, it started, the sun shined, and we were able to get a bus tour. The story of the Crazy Horse Memorial is fascinating. And if you don't know it, I encourage you to find out more, because it was started in 1949, is not completed. It has no completion timeline or date. It's privately funded. And the man who began the construction of the memorial, his family is completing the work. And this is the second generation of, it's a hard Polish name, of family members that are devoting their lives to creating this and completing the Crazy Horse Memorial. Big recommendation and 5 stars for the Crazy Horse Memorial. Not far away is Mount Rushmore, and so we made it to Mount Rushmore about 7:45 p.m. And if you know anything about National Park Mount Rushmore, is there's a lighting ceremony. So we stayed for the lighting ceremony, which was really nice. They did like a 20-minute voiceover about the nation and what we do to honor veterans. And it was just a very touching ceremony. The national park guides were really helpful. There was a couple guys that I talked to there and encouraged us to stay for the lighting. You know, by this time we'd been on the road for 2 days, so we were pretty ragged, but it was definitely worth the experience to see. From there, our next destination was to try to get to Yellowstone at least as close to the entrance as we could. Yellowstone is ginormous and you can enter it from 4 different states. So we were going to get right outside the entrance, but by the time we got there, the next day, we were close enough that we went into the park and then went to Old Faithful. And we got there just in time for Old Faithful to begin, well, about an hour and a half before Old Faithful was set to erupt, whatever they do. And so we just kind of hung out, walked around the park. It's a geyser lands that you can walk through, but there's hot, bubbly water everywhere. So you really have to kind of be cognizant of where you're at. We got to see Old Faithful go up and it was really fascinating. It lasted for about 30 seconds and then the crowd disperses. There's hundreds of people there watching it and you hear a ooh. And then once it was over, it was over. So everybody just kind of loaded up and headed on their way. From there, we got a room there in Yellowstone at Yellowstone Lake Lodge. We got a little cabin and spent a very comfortable night in the Yellowstone National Park, which was amazing. During the night, we heard some animals yelping and kind of scary, but I mean, there's hundreds of people around and we're living in the wildlife. So fun experience. Now, the next morning, we didn't make it as far as Grand Teton. We continued to explore most of Yellowstone throughout the rest of the day, but we knew that we wanted to make it to Grand Teton National Park, which is one of the exits or entrances to the park. So we headed out that direction, not before stopping at many overlooks and taking many different photos. We went to the Yellowstone Canyon. We saw more waterfalls, just gorgeous views, more buffalo in the meadow, and amazing. It's just amazing. We did have some funny things that we saw. Like at one stop at a gas station, we stopped and there was just random goats milling about looking for food and I don't know, of course, goofy things that were happening. But one of the things that kept us a little bit sane was we listened to audiobooks. So here's a pro tip. If you're crossing the country, get yourself an interesting audiobook. We were listening to the second book of the Outlander series. And the reason I chose them is because they're very long, over 30 and 40 hours. The second book was not my favorite reader, so I made sure to get a different reader on the third one, which we did begin and got about halfway through on the way home. Now, the highlight of Grand Teton was definitely our visit to Lake Jenny, which was what we did the very next morning. We stayed in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which was a difficult place to find a hotel that is affordable. That was a $400 stay in a Super 8 motel, which was about a 2 to 3 star rating on that one. It was rather run down and a little bit noisy, but it was a place to get some rest. So the next morning we headed to Lake Jenny in Grand Teton National Park. And let me tell you, if we'd had more time, that was one place that I would have really liked to stay longer because the water was brilliant. It was so clear. And another beautiful day where we were visiting. It would have been one of those days where I would have loved to just spend time on the lake, jump in the water, and just have a relaxing day. But we had more things that we wanted to see. So one of the things I didn't mention about South Dakota, and as we crossed into Wyoming, was Devil's Tower. And that was one of the big things that Lila wanted to see. So it's a big rock that sticks up out of the landscape. And the story behind it is also really cool. Native Americans believed that it was meant to protect them from giant bear. So if a giant, huge bear was chasing them, they would climb the rock. And ironically, there were a couple that were climbing the rock while we were visiting. So we walked around Devil's Tower, and it was a man and a woman, and I mean, assume we couldn't see them, but they were climbing up when we started, and by the time we were leaving, they were climbing down. Just fascinating, really cool. All right, so Grand Teton, we visited Grand Teton, and from there, we headed towards Oregon. But first, we had to go through Idaho. Idaho was a lot of places where we stopped was Shoshone Falls or Twin Falls. And we stayed the night in Twin Falls. And that hotel was very nice. It was a place called My Place. Craters of the Moon National Park. I circle star highlight this one. This is a 5 stars. The Craters of the Moon is a big, huge lava bed. And I think it was 2,000 years ago, this lava had covered that section of the country. And now all that remains are these lava craters. And it's got loads of diverse, different terrain. There are different formations that were formed by the lava, and you can see all of that. And one thing that we did do at that park was there's a giant like cinder hill, and we climbed it and climbed down, and that was pretty cool. It was a hot day and you're on lava, so thankfully it was breezy, but it was definitely warm enough to work up a sweat. And from there, we went to a place called Bruneau Dunes State Park. And as far as the visits go, this is probably one that's a 3 out of 5 stars. We could have left this one out, but it was so bizarre because you're driving across the state and all of a sudden you come across these sand dunes randomly in the middle of nothing. And it's surrounded by farmland and just a complete random state park. It was great. But we could have done without that one. It was so hot, and you're standing on sand. So it was challenging. To Oregon. Next destination was Oregon. This was another long day in the car. We passed through Portland. We made it to the Oregon coast. We stayed in Seaside, Oregon that night. And Leila wanted to visit Cannon Beach because this is where Haystack Rock is. Haystack Rock is featured in the Goonies. Now, the cool part about this was during a low tide, you can actually walk out to Haystack Rock, which is what we did. And you could really see the marine life and the wildlife that attach themselves to the Haystack Rock during high tide. And once the tide recedes, these starfish and anemone are just left in tide pools, and we were able to take some great pictures of those and take it all in. The Oregon coast is so unique in that, unique to us who are coming from the North Carolina and Florida beaches that are just sand and palms and lovely in their own way. So the Oregon coast is such a contrast to that. So pretty. All right, we decided to go on 101, the Pacific Coast Highway. So we're driving southward through Oregon, and it's slow going because it's 2-lane and lots of campers and RVs and such. But we would stop along the way and take various pictures. One place we stopped was a place called the Devil's Punch Bowl. And there was a cute little diner. It was called Moe's Diner, maybe, or something. And I got a blackened salmon sandwich that was just delicious. And then Lila got some clam chowder that was phenomenal too. So, if you're going to stay at the beach, you better get some seafood. Oregon took us to California. And the next national park that we stayed at was Redwoods National Park. And it's actually national and state park, they were telling us. But nothing compares to the Redwoods. And if you've been there, you know. Otherwise, if you've not, you just can't believe how giant these trees are and just how precious to me that they are, because there's not a whole lot of them left. And they told us that this was the only place in the world that these trees can grow, which makes me wonder. I just would love to see what it was like before people came in and took them down, because I imagine that they're straight and wonderful for furniture and such. So Just fantasizing. I'm sure there's an AI video out there somewhere that shows what California would have looked like if the redwoods had been still there, the forest remained. But there's still people who are protecting them and working to keep them as they are. All right, in California, the price of gas is outrageous. We didn't want to spend a whole lot of time there because the price of gas is outrageous, but it's a huge state, so we had to drive through much of it to get home. We decided we were going to take our trip home that Wednesday. So we had already been on the road since Monday, July 6th. That would have been, I think, the 18th, 14th, or 15th. So from there, we really stopped stopping so much. We drove through Nevada. We stopped in Arizona. We stopped at the Petrified Forest and were able to take some cool pics of Route 66. And we were right next to Route 66. We were traveling on Interstate 40 by this time on our way back to North Carolina. We went through Albuquerque, New Mexico, because we've been to New Mexico several times, and we had a favorite restaurant we wanted to stop at called Tomasitas. So we did that. I mean, if you've never had New Mexico food, you have to go just for the food because it is to die for. We hadn't eaten all day, so by the time we got there, I almost forgot to take pictures of my food because we were so hungry. And so we've been talking about stopping there for days. So it was very much something that we were looking forward to. All right, the rest of the trip really was spent on the road in the Jeep, just constantly listening to our stories and stopping at gas stations. So one place we stopped was in Oklahoma. I don't remember what, it might have been a Flying J or something. But let me tell you, the people there were so friendly. They encouraged us to get some pizza and a Pepsi, and we did. So the two of us both ate for like $8.50 that day. Don't know that would be how we would be eating regularly, but they were very kind about it, and well, it is what it is. By this time, it's done. Passed through Texas, passed through Oklahoma. We went through Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. And by the time we made it to Georgia, I was pretty much over taking pictures of welcome to South Carolina. But we had to pass through a little bit of South Carolina to get our way back home. So overall, the cross-country trip was excellent. We spent 18 days on the road. We crossed 24 different states. We visited 6 national parks. We drove a total miles of, I'm not real sure, over 7,000, and I need new tires on the Jeep. Lila's favorite part of the trip was the Oregon coast. She said it reminded her of Maine. I've not been to Maine, and I'm down to only having to visit 9 more states in order to get to 50 total states, which is definitely a bucket list goal for me. My favorite thing was Crazy Horse and Mount Rushmore, because those were 2 things that I really wanted to see. It speaks to my U.S. history background and my nerdy historical side. So I really loved those 2. And I really loved Yellowstone. But my favorite part of Yellowstone was Grand Teton by far. I would love to go back there and spend more time. Blissful, lucky that we did not have any Jeep problems. At one point, the wind was whipping across the flat land. I don't remember what state we were running through. Lila could tell you what part of the Jeep was making a funny noise. So the next day she had to stop at an O'Reilly's and get some pieces and parts, and was no longer concerned after that. So the Jeep held up, and well, it's got a lot more miles on it now, but I just got the Jeep in January and it held its end of the bargain up just fine. So super excited about that. Some of the things and reflections, I'm going to get into my book and just tell you some of the things that I wrote down. You know, this was definitely something that we had been planning for a while. However, we didn't really have a plan. The plan was just to drive until Lila was tired, and all I had to do was sit back and relax and listen to the stinking story. She drove till she didn't want to drive anymore, and we stayed where we could find a place to stay. I didn't have any worries or concerns, really. So as far as that goes, no planning was really part of this trip. But one of the things I will take away is, number one, our country is so diverse. Now, I'm talking from the lens of having never visited Europe. I'm the only member of my family that has not been outside, to Europe. I've been to Asia. I've been to the Caribbean on cruises. But this country is so different from one region to the next, and you don't have to have a passport in order to experience it. So there's really a lot to offer to people if you're willing to and have the means to experience it. It was a reminder of just how diverse and how massive our country is. But if it's something that, if you're appealing to visiting national parks, this was a great way to do it. I might have been the only adult that was getting my passport signed or stamping my passport. One of my favorite passport stamps was the Craters of the Moon, because it's their little mascot, and they have a name for it. I forget what it is. The Petrified Forest has a special ones that you can't even see because I'm holding it up. But Congaree National Forest we went to before this spring. But if you're going to do national parks, I recommend getting a passport because it just makes it fun to go in the visitor center and get that taken care of. All right, some takeaways. I thought that Upper Sandusky was rural until we drove through South Dakota and Wyoming. Man, there are some places out there where there is nothing around. It is just so remote and so small in this vast openness. The national park system is awesome. It's excellent. And we should fight for everything that the National Park Service gives us because they really do a great job. I love it. Gas is super expensive in California. How people live there, I'm not exactly sure, but they sure do because there's thousands of people. Personally, this is just Nicole editorializing. I think Jackson Hole, Wyoming is overrated. The drive was pretty, no doubt about it, but I also am not visiting in winter and I'm not a skier, so maybe there's more appeal to that. And we didn't spend much time there, so maybe take that rating for what it's worth. Driving was kind of tough, especially the way home, because we were just balls to the wall by that point trying to make it home. And Leila did all the driving, so good hat tip to her. The people in Oklahoma were awesome. Audiobooks with bad readers are hard to digest, but we got through the bad reader and we got a better reader on the next book. And if you're spending a lot of time in the car, that's the way I recommend spending those long hours. It just goes by better. All right, well, that is our journey across the country. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear about anybody else's experiences with a cross-country road trip. What are your favorite national parks? Is there something that I should have done that I didn't, that I can save for next summer? Or what are your recommendations? All right, back to school next week, so maybe my content will be more psychology related after this, but this one was a fun one. Thanks so much.
Hate it when my doubts and my fears swell up like the ocean. It feels like I could drown in my tears. Everything's overflowing. Scared that I won't get it right, get it right. My nerves are working overtime, overtime. Tell myself to calm down and breathe. Step out of the shadows into the fire. Don't be afraid to be out on a wire. Live in the moment, turn it louder. This is what you're made for. You just gotta be